Welcome back, everybody, to study number 2, which is for the month of November, lesson number 4. And this is the first one of our second week for this study. And last week, we looked at seeing reality within illusion and learning to recognize that behind the flickering play of appearances, there lies something real and something spiritual. And this week, we're going to go a bit deeper into the vision of the yogi. We're going to start to look at seeing who is moving through the illusion, the soul itself. So today we'll look at some verses that I love. The 15th chapter of the Bhagavad-gītā. I could say it's a favorite chapter of the Bhagavad-gītā, although it's kind of hard to. They're all kind of favorites. But that being said, the 15th chapter is short, packed. It's got beautiful verses, incredible insights, and a beautiful ending. But we're going to be looking more at earlier verses, texts 7 through 11 of the 15th chapter, where Krishna reveals how a self-realized bhakti yogi sees what others cannot see, and how we can also begin to develop what he calls the jnana chakshusa, the eyes of knowledge. So let's start with an analogy here. It's an analogy that's just meant to help illustrate what we mean when we say they're seeing things that others don't see. That a yogi could see something that others don't see. So let's just take a simple analogy. Now, most people, when they walk along a city street, they're absorbed in what's on the surface. They see the storefronts and the traffic and the rush of human activity. That's where their attention goes. It's that they're aware of. Okay, that's where their awareness lies, on that surface level. But right beneath their feet, there's an entire world that they don't see that's really even maintaining all that they do see, but they're unaware of it. Whereas someone with deeper knowledge, not just your common person walking the street, but let's say an engineer or an urban planner, someone that has a deeper knowledge about how a city works, they walk along the same street. They look at the same scene, but with a far more developed awareness. They perceive the hidden systems that make the visible world on the surface function. They can see beneath the pavement. They know how the buildings extend downward. They understand the tunnels, for the underground transportation and the challenges of keeping them flowing steadily. They're aware of the whole lattice of power lines and water mains and fiber optic cables and gas pipes and the whole synchronized network of energy and signals that keep the city alive. So the ordinary passerby sees the surface. The engineer sees design and interconnection running through it all. So again, by seeing, I'm not talking about like X-ray vision. I'm talking about a steady awareness of what is happening in the background. They're looking at the surface, but they're aware of what's happening in the background. In that sense, they're seeing what's happening in the background, and they're seeing what others don't see. So in the same way, a yogi moves through this world with a type of vision or steady awareness that others don't have. And particularly, we want to talk about that in these verses and how they see other people and what other people are going through. So now let's not look at the city, let's look at the people, right? An average person looks at the people on the street and they see bodies and faces and actions and the stories that unfold through those actions. They see them, they see all these people through the filter of their desires and their aversions. And they feel a whole spectrum of emotions tied to that mental programming, right? We all have mental programming. We're programmed to respond to some people as attractive and some people as repulsive, right? Certain things we feel this will make us happy and this won't. That programming is deep within us, and we tend to look at other people and relate to them through that programming. That's tied to it's a filter that we have, a filter of desires and aversions. And it ties us to this whole spectrum of emotions that we feel in relation to other people, right? It's mental programming in our mind that we see through in our relation to other people. Now, the yogi sees the same people, but not through the lens of attachment and aversion, but through the eyes of knowledge. Through knowledge, they develop a deeper awareness. They perceive the karmic architecture beneath everything, right? They see the souls within the bodies, each an eternal spark of divine consciousness journeying through various forms for a number of days or years, a short number of days or years, being carried by the mind and by their desires, struggling as they pass through this intricate circuitry of karma, being carried from one body to the next, sometimes from one species to the next, growing old, dying, being reborn, dying again. This is the intricate circuitry of karma. And when the yogi looks at a street full of people, they're not just seeing those forms and responding to them according to mental programming of what's attractive and what's repulsive, what I'm attracted to and what I'm averse from. They're seeing them with this vision. These are all souls passing through this world, bound by the law of karma, creating their next body as they're living now, living out the karma from their previous life and creating the karma for the next. It's a type of vision that opens up the heart to great compassion. And the great saints have this vision and they have this compassion. So let's go ahead and dive into the verses now. We're going to start with chapter 15, text number 7, a famous verse. The living entities in this conditioned world, Krishna says, they are my eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditioned life, that's the mental programming that we're talking about. They're struggling very hard with the six senses, which include the mind, right? The mind is kind of like the computer, and the six senses are like, the eyes are like the camera, and the ears are like the microphone, etc. All these plug-in devices of the senses are bringing in data that's plugged into the mind, and that mind is programmed with ideas of what will make me happy and won't. It's also plugged in with ideas of who I am, who I think I am, although it's really just an identification with the body and the mind. So this verse gives a tight summary of the experience of the soul as it moves through the illusory world. What is the soul doing when they're out of touch with their true nature? They're struggling with the demands of the mind and the senses, trying to gratify the senses by repeating experiences that have been programmed to be understood as pleasurable, and trying to avoid those experiences which the mind is deemed unpleasurable. Right. Now let's look at just how much ground this verse covers about the nature and the circumstances of the soul trapped in the material body. Mamai Vangsha, Jiva Loke. Mamai Vangsha, Mama means me, and Eva means certainly, and Anksa means fragmental parts. So Krishna is saying, all these living beings, they're my fragmental parts. They're made of my energy. They're made of me in a sense. But at the same time, they're angsa. They're separate. They're one with me, but they have their own individual will, their own individual consciousness. And it's not that they at some point wake up from that and realize that they are God, or merge into God, however you want. Really, the way that the Shankarites describe it is not that they merge into God, but they realize all along I was. But no, they're fragmental parts. He says sanatana. They're eternally my fragmental parts. The soul is simultaneously part of God and yet an individual with free will. Now, by nature, to be a part means to serve the whole. Like a leaf, for instance, serves like the entire plant. And thus it's nourished and maintained by the entire plant. And when free will is used to separate oneself from God, then illusion sets in and one becomes conditioned, one becomes programmed in the mind towards illusion. So then manashastan indriyani, prakriti stani karshati. This karshati, then that's where they struggle, right? In the conditioned state, one struggles in this world, seeking and sometimes finding temporary pleasures, but coming up against the laws of karma and the force of time, which inevitably brings suffering. That's what the yogi sees. They're not just saying, oh, that person's happy, that person's having fun, or look at that. No, they're saying everybody's struggling with the mind and the senses, right? Going through these waves up and down, up and down. This is what the yogi sees. Everyone is divine by nature, but struggling hard with the mind and the senses. Okay. Now text number 8. The living entity in the material world carries his different conceptions of life from one body to another as the air carries aromas. Thus he takes one kind of body and again quits it to take another. So that it's saying that when the physical body dies, the subtle body, the mind, it travels with the self, right? And it carries its conceptions, programming within the mind, along with the soul. It enters into a new body, right? And then that body is programmed according to that karma, is designed according to that karma. The images, the sounds, etc., that compose our external experience, they waft through the senses. They enter into this through the senses into the mind. They form ideas about what will make us happy. We call that material ideas, material desires. And they also develop convictions about who we are. These take root in the mind and create a false sense of identity, or the false ego. By the influence of material desire and the false sense of identity, we make choices, and we act in pursuance of those desires. These actions form the basis for the design of the next body, and that's how karma operates. And this is what the yogi's seeing, right? They're seeing, we tend to see people, they're moving, they're doing this, and we're excited by it, we're attracted to it. We may be repulsed by it. The yogi's seeing through that surface level, and they're seeing them operate within this realm of karma. This is what the yogi sees. Now, text 15:9. The living entity, thus taking another gross body, obtains a certain type of ear, eye, tongue, nose, and sense of touch, which are grouped around the mind. He thus enjoys a particular set of sense objects. Now you're in a new body, and that body is going to be programmed to pursue certain pleasures and avoid certain discomforts, you could say. So based on these bodily factors like species and gender and other individual factors, the mind takes a particular shape along with a particular programming of attraction and repulsion. Now this is text 10. And now we begin to talk about the vision, the deeper vision, or precisely Krishna coins this term here, Jnana Chakshusa. He says the foolish cannot understand how a living entity can quit his body, nor can they understand what sort of body he enjoys under the spell of the modes of nature. But one whose eyes are trained in knowledge can see all of this, right? In other words, someone seeing just on the surface level identifies the body as the self. They just see the surface. So when the body dies, they say, oh, that person died. No. Someone whose eyes are trained. How does the Bhagavad-gītā train our eyes in the knowledge? It begins right there with this idea about the hinosmin yata dehe kaumaram yovanam jara. This is, back in text in chapter 2, 2:13. He's saying, just look, Arjuna, how even in one body, our awareness stays the same, even though we pass through many bodies, even in one birth, right? The cells that my body is made up right now are not the cells that I was in when I was 5 years old or 10 years old or 15 years old. Those cells have all separated. I'm in a different body now. It may have some DNA coding so that it carries certain similarities, but it's a physically different body that I'm in right now. But my consciousness is the same. I remember I was aware of that body I was in as a 5 and a 10-year-old and a 15-year-old. And now I'm aware of this body, and all the elements of this body will die and move on, all the cells and so on. And then I'll be in another body. It's happening right now, even though it's very difficult to see. But like this, we can train the eyes to see the distinction between the self and the body and even the mind. So when one's eyes are trained, they can see all of this, right? Vimudha nanu pasyanti. Again, this pash is the root for seeing that we've been using a lot in the Bhagavad-gītā. Foolish people, the vimudha, They cannot see this, but pasyanti, jnana chakshusa, those who have eyes of knowledge, they can see it. So these verses serve as an invitation to see or contemplate how the components of material existence, such as karma and reincarnation, are working, right? I want to read just a little part of the commentary to this verse from Srila Prabhupada for you. He writes, the word jnana chakshusa is very significant. Without knowledge, one cannot understand how a living entity leaves his present body, nor what form of body he is going to take in the next life, nor even why he is living in a particular type of body. Why am I in this body? One who has knowledge can understand how that's been designed through the circuitry of karma, right? Prabhupada writes, this requires a great amount of knowledge understood from Bhagavad-gītā and similar literatures, heard from a bona fide spiritual master. One who is trained to perceive all these things is fortunate. Every living entity is quitting his body under certain circumstances. He is living under certain circumstances, and he is enjoying under certain circumstances under the spell of material illusion. As a result, he is suffering different kinds of happiness and distress under the illusion of sense enjoyment. Persons who are everlastingly fooled by lust and desire lose all power to understand their change of body and their stay in a particular body, right? Our desire overwhelms the clarity of our perception, and we can't understand who I am. What am I doing in this body? How did I get in this body? And how do I become liberated from this body, right? So Prabhupada writes, they cannot comprehend it. Those who have developed spiritual knowledge, however, can see that the spirit is different from the body and is changing its body and enjoying in different ways. A person in such knowledge can understand how the conditioned living entity is suffering in this material existence. The person with the jnana chakshusha, the person whose knowledge has matured, they understand all this. They have a clear conviction about it. And, that conviction is something that's very real. On our episode today, which I think was episode 1695, Raghunath and I discussed about like the conviction about reincarnation. Some people can say, well, you can't prove it empirically. And, and honestly, there's a lot of, there's all these past life studies and so on that have very convincing evidence. And this is my point. The idea that for anything to be accepted as true, or to develop a conviction that something is true and real and live by that conviction, the idea that can only be based on empiric knowledge is a silly idea. That idea cannot be proven empirically. So the whole thing is a fallacy, right? But that being said, there's other types of evidence that are really important. And we were discussing them in relation to, say, like murder investigations, where sometimes there's forensic evidence that's compelling and gives proof, like DNA or things like that. But there's a lot of times where a jury, under the watchful eye of a qualified judge, will condemn a person to life in prison, not based on forensic evidence, but based on testimony or based on circumstantial evidence. Evidence where you make inferential connections, right? So we shouldn't consider that these are insignificant forms of evidence, that we can hear the testimony of the Vedas, right? The testimony of great souls, of great yogis of the past shared through these ancient texts, or that we can't observe this world with our senses and make inferential connections, just like the Gita was asking us to do, and saying, look, you've been in many bodies in one life. Why are you thinking that the self is the body or mind, right? So these things are real important. And one, through contemplating, nobody's saying just accept this like dogma. It's saying experiment with this, think about it, reflect on it, apply it, and see if these convictions grow in you and they grow stronger. And if they do, they give you tremendous relief, and they give you tremendous control of the self. They give you tremendous freedom. And as I was saying before, they open you up to things like compassion, ultimately devotion and love. Okay. Now let's read text 15:11, the last verse that we'll be reading today. There, it just kind of brings home the message stronger. The endeavoring transcendentalists who are situated in self-realization can see all this clearly, right? Again, this seeing means they have an awareness of what's taking place underneath the surface. They see it clearly. But those whose minds are not developed, they haven't been contemplating this kind of truth, right? And who are not situated in self-realization, they identify with the mind and body, they cannot see what's taking place, right? They can't see what's happening behind the scenes, though they may try. Okay, that's our last verse for today. Now, I have a little exercise I want to share with you. It's a simple one, but I think it can be a valuable one, and you may want to try this exercise in relation to lesson number 4. Are you ready? All this requires is observing, right? Observing your own mind. Notice how your mind and senses react to the people around you, how attraction and aversion arise within your own mind based on externals, such as another's appearance, another's behavior, another's tone, or another's opinion, right? Just notice it. Don't even try to suppress it. Watch how the programming in your own mind shapes your perceptions and emotions towards other people. And then quietly ask yourself this question. Is this mental programming interfering with my ability to see the spiritual reality of the journey that this soul is on, right? Is the mental programming in my mind of attraction and aversion blocking me from relating to them as a soul? Am I relating to them, especially initially, right? We relate based on their externals, right? Are they blocking my ability to see them as a soul, just like myself, a spark of pure spiritual energy, moving through this world, struggling with the mind and the senses, and entangled? Can I see them that way? Can I see them with genuine heart-to-heart compassion, or do I see them based on the externals, right? So that's it for today. I think if you try that experiment, just try it. Just look into your mind. See your own conditioning. This is how we become free. Part of how we become free. That type of it's a type of devotional service to prepare oneself to better serve Sri Krishna and ultimately to make ourselves more receptive to Sri Krishna's mercy. That's all for today. Thank you all so much. I look forward to joining you in a couple of days again for lesson number 5. Hari Om Tat Sat.